Okay, we are live.
Perfect. Let me share that with the team and we will get going. All right. Well, welcome, everyone. We are Future is Now Coalition, and we are live right now on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. And before we get into today's episode, we're going to introduce ourselves and then get into the meat and potatoes. So, like I said, we are Fink, and Fink is your personal civic utility company. And at Fink, we are streamlining democracy so that you can start voting for you. And what we do, we plug everyone into one fair, people first system, making democracy simple, clear, and built for citizens. And how do we make this participation simple? Well, we're putting every candidate on equal footing. We're lowering the barriers for grassroots voices, and we're cutting out the noise and streamlining the process. All of that culminates in less waste and more representation. So, with this built in accountability, leaders start answering to the people, not to money and not to insiders. So, again, we are Fink and we welcome everyone to plug in, be heard, and get results. And in a couple of weeks, in about a month, we'll be rolling out our digital politics hub. So I'll be talking about that as the time gets closer. But that will help us co-build digital democracy, which will be the future home for America's politics built by citizens. So that is who we are. And before we dive in, wherever you're tuning in from, Facebook, TikTok, or YouTube, give us a like, tap that heart, jump into the chat, and hit that follow. Okay, cool. So we're going to get into today's topic about everyone's favorite topic, the government shutdown, and how Fink approaches this debacle and talks about it within the language of rigged incentives. So, right, both sides of the aisle are super angry. People feel like the Democrats caved, right? Didn't stand up for their voters. And people are feeling like the Republicans are playing games, right, with their power. And both of these show that the shutdown wasn't about us, the voters, us, the citizens. And we'll talk about this more, but it's about power and how the concentration of power protects itself. So we'll be using Fink's up-down lens to talk about this and how it's a better descriptor of what is happening in the halls of Congress. So we will fade away from the emotion and the confusion of the shutdown and look at the patterns that are present in this. So first, gosh, Travis, let's talk about uh, both both sides of the aisles, right? Neither, if you're a Republican or a Democrat, this shutdown really pissed off voters. Can you just give us a couple sentences about what that distinction means? Why are voters and those who we elect so disconnected and maybe part of uh, Fink's angle of what that looks like today?
Sure. So at the core of it, like what we talk about with digital politics is up versus down politics. So it's up serving candidates are the power first candidates, and down serving candidates are the people first candidates. Um, and so the idea of this and what we really want Americans to realize, regardless of their political side, left, right, third party, whatever, is to really look at candidates as up versus down, in addition to left versus right and other ideologies. And so real brief, like, so up-serving candidates, they serve their big donors, they serve those that have more power than them, they serve like special interests. They're basically turning to those with the concentration of power to help them rise in their own power. Whereas down-serving candidates are the grassroots candidates. They actually serve the voters. They serve who they're meant to serve, us, and just go straight for, like, they try to win your vote, and so they're more about small dollar donations and trying to avoid those conflicts of interest. And so that's kind of the core difference between the two sides of up versus down. So pertaining to the government shutdown, a lot of people are saying, again, but regardless of what side you're on, is like, the average people are the ones suffering through all that. They're not suffering in Congress. They're still doing their thing. They're not in the heart of the consequences of the shutdown. So to them, it's just a game that they're playing, the political game. Whereas, Americans are the ones that end up suffering for this. So a down-serving candidate actually really understands the pain points of the citizens and acknowledging, like, during this shutdown, it's causing pain to average Americans, where the up-serving candidates kind of don't really give a shit about that.
Yeah, that's totally true. And I love the way you put that, Travis, that, those in power, that we give power to, don't feel the repercussions. I think you said aren't at the heart of the consequences. And I really like the way you put that, because that's so true, right? How many times, regardless of who's in power, do we feel that we're almost looking at the puppeteers, right, that are unaffected by what goes on in our regular lives? And that's such a key thing that I think is percolating in people's minds right now, of whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or independent, nobody besides those in power really got anything out of the shutdown, right? So Democrats feel like their leaders caved, right? And because they were holding out for the ACA and other things that their voters wanted. Republicans, and I'm not really in Republican circles, but felt that it wasn't needed. It was a waste of government money. So yeah, all of these things are angering the voters. But what we're talking about is the inability for leaders to hear the concerns of their people, because they are only listening to their big donors, their insiders and consultants, and not to the little guys like us. So something I'm really excited to talk about when it comes to the shutdown and the reopening was actually, it involved Mitch McConnell, it involved Rand Paul, which are both Republicans, pretty well-known Republicans, both from Kentucky, but they're completely opposite in how they address the reopening of the government. So I don't know if anyone else has heard about this, but part of the reopening of the government, Mitch McConnell snuck in a provision that banned hemp products. And that might seem, inconsequential to you, but in favor of big liquor, right? He's from Kentucky, that's bourbon country. So what Rand Paul was trying to do was saying, hey, reopening the government, with this hemp ban puts jobs at risk, it puts people's livelihoods at risk, and it puts the will of the people at risk. So before we dive deeper into that, we have a video to play that goes a little deeper into what that looks like, and then we'll talk about it.
Bring up hemp, of all things, at such a crucial moment when the end of the shutdown was there? You know what the answer is? Because this guy was trying to stop an injustice. This had nothing to do with shutdown politics. It had everything to do with him trying to shut down a dirty move by his fellow Kentucky senator, rewarding greed, rewarding special interests in our politics over the interests and wellness of millions of Americans. Senator Mitch McConnell sneaked in a measure that just effectively banned THC and CBD products. Weird target? Yeah. Random? Nope. He did this to please his bourbon-pushing buddies in Kentucky. As one of his final acts, the senior senator chose to help push poison at the expense of medicine. One medical study found...
That's as far as you wanted to go, right, Liz?
Exactly. So some points that I'd like to have a conversation with you, Travis, about first is, like Cuomo said there, this provision had nothing to do with the government reopening. It had nothing to do with the ability of the government to function. So we talk a little bit about maybe the why behind Mitch McConnell favoring big liquor over hemp. That might seem inconsequential to regular people, but what that really means about the structure of power and favoring donors over voters.
Yeah, so first of all, what this is an example of also is called riders, bill riders. And that's when like something completely irrelevant is thrown on a bill or any form of legislation. And just so ridiculous. I mean, that's one of the things that needs to get outlawed. That it's just so crazy that there could be a bill that's completely irrelevant, like to something that they try to slide in there. All legislation should be like about the legislation. There shouldn't be something like totally random. So that's one piece of it. But yeah. So a lot like. There's a lot of obviously a lot of variables and factors playing into these decisions, but it boils down to that pressure of your big donors are pretty much always going to override the will of your voters. If you're an establishment candidate and that's where your funding comes from, that's where you have to go, because no matter how many voters you anger, it boils down to like, if I don't get that, thousands of dollars, reach my millions in campaign funding, I'm not going to get reelected. So even though the voters are the ones voting for you, like right now, the money is more important to get your vote. Like as a up-serving politician, I would rather like screw you over as a voter and then expect the money to buy your vote anyway. And that's really what it boils down to. Like, oh, well, you know what? All my Republican people, and when it boils down, you're going to vote for the lesser of two evils. You're going to vote for me. So I don't really need to fulfill all my promises to you. And obviously those kinds of decisions are a little more nuanced than that, more complex than that. But that is like a little bit of oversimplification of how the decisions go, is that their money is more important than your vote, because the money is still gonna still result in your vote. Not to get into a whole spiel on this one, but like, if you look at all the approval ratings in Congress, like both sides are deeply low approval ratings, and yet the reelection rates of these candidates are astronomical. It's above 90% chance that they get reelected, even though they are deeply disliked and not being approved of. So they feel very safe. It doesn't matter if you care, like it doesn't matter if they screw you over as the voter. Like it boils down to, you're stuck in the lesser two evils, and long as long as my district goes Republican or my district goes Democrat, like you're gonna vote for me, I'm still gonna win. I just need the money to do so. So that's a good
Yeah, and something unique about Mitch McConnell is, gosh, what is he, 200 years old? This is one of his last things to do while in power. So it's, for him even, I think it's a little more insidious that he's not even doing it for his next election. He's doing it for the money and the return on investment that he's getting from the bourbon company, or the bourbon, powerhouse, the big liquor. And something I want to dive into is that we're not here to say this is a Democrat problem or a Republican problem. This is because Rand Paul said, hey, this ban, he's also a Republican from Kentucky, so basically a mirror image of Mitch McConnell. And he's saying, wait a second, hemp it's big money, it's big business. It could bring a lot of taxes in. And like we're saying in the chat, hemp, marijuana, things like that are so divided between the voters and what we have in the halls of Congress right now. Yeah, so Travis, if you could just talk a little bit about how this goes beyond just left and right, because it's two Republicans talking about different aspects, but also voter incentive for what voters want, and maybe talk a little bit about marijuana and hemp being voter friendly but not legal friendly, I guess is the way to say it.
Yeah, so I mean, pretty much just there's no correlation between public opinion and government action. So like Carrie's saying in our TikTok chat here that so in July 2025, Pew Research said 9 out of 10 U.S. adults say that marijuana should be legal for both medical and recreational purposes, and yet that's a pipe dream for that to even get legalized federally, at least. And there's just policy by policy. There are so many scenarios where like 70, 80, 90% of Americans want something, and Congress isn't going to give it to us because the money that they get is against it. And there's like virtually a net zero correlation between public opinion and government action. That's why that as Fink, that is the problem that we are looking to tackle in our grand mission is this money in politics. It's like people know that it's an influence, but they have no idea how deep it is. Most people have no idea how like every decision in Congress is all it's always about like who's donating to my campaign, what actions am I going to take that big donors are not like. First, it's not only like they're not going to donate to me, but they're going to go out of their way to donate against me is a huge situation that happens. They don't even care party lines anymore. The big donors are kind of like, there's some big donors stick to one side, but a lot of them are both now. They donate to both Democrats and Republicans, and either way, they'll outright say like, hey, we'll put money in attack ads, and we'll just start posting attack ads if you don't do what we tell you. So it's not only just I'm gonna lose this money, but it's like it's negative. They're gonna spend money against you. So it's just disgusting that it's like those with the concentration of power are gonna reinforce power and influence, and us as average voters get pushed aside, which is not democracy.
I wish we could end on that note. That was such a perfect summary of the almost the circus nature of democracy today, right? You buy a candidate, you make sure you funnel money, and you get what you want, and the American people have no real power to fight against that. But let me reset the room. Welcome to everyone who has joined us on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. We're Fink. We are your civic utility company, and we are streamlining democracy and co-building with America an alternative system that makes democracy fair, simple, and accountable. So remember to jump in the chat, say hello to us, and subscribe to us. Our handle is futureis.org all over social media. So find us. Give us a like and give us a follow. But yeah, let's keep talking, Travis, about why, let's keep on the subject of the government shutdown, why it is more accurate to talk about things in terms of up and down versus left and right. Because to me, it's something like a government shutdown. It just happened, in my opinion, to happen under Republican presidency with Republican control of all the houses. But that's not anything super foreign to Democrats either. So it's not this big injustice that only Republicans do. It's not this big injustice that legislation is kind of BS against the voters. So can you help us zoom out of the kind of archaic language of left versus right and go more into why something like when both sides of the aisle are disappointed, why it's better to address politicians as up versus down.
Yeah, because we really need to, like you said, America in general has to really zoom out and look at the picture from this grander scale, because we're so trapped into both sides use the excuses of their party. And when you zoom out, like you see, like your point right now, Republicans have a majority in all chambers, and you know um and both sides always have, usually it goes that when a new president comes in, usually they have a majority at least for 2 years, um or more, but regardless of, so both sides have had their chance where they have full majorities across all chambers, and yet like the main things that their party wants still is nowhere to be found. And you talk to people about their party, and they'll say, "Oh, well, it was the other party prevented the votes." And it's like, you know, yes, it's complicated. There's like a whole filibuster thing, but like, no, it's they're able to get the votes when they like the military budget. They want like 10 trillion more dollars to spend on the war. They get the votes. Like anytime it's like establishment stuff, they get the votes. It's always when the people are going to lose out is when it doesn't get the votes. And we got to stop with the BS of both sides, because obviously your party's not going to turn to you and say, oh well, you know what, we had to lie to you because we needed your votes, but like we really have to give our donors more attention because we need the money. We really care about our big donors more than we care about you. No, they can't say that. They're gonna have to give excuses. Oh, we really tried, but we couldn't get a resolution, and these two people on our side had to go the other way because their district is more on the other side, and blah blah blah, excuse. And it boils down to, it's not about left versus right, it's about people versus power. It's about whether it's about a more left-leaning policy or right-leaning policy, boils down to that you have, like, to be a good candidate, you have to take on big pharma, take on big data, take on the big all the bigs, the big oil, big pharma, all of them. And that's what it boils down to. And it doesn't necessarily mean go Democrat and massively tax, massively regulate, or go right. Like, it's more about, okay, what is right? Maybe it's going to hurt the billionaire's profits, or like someone at the top or state shareholder or whatever, but it's going to help most America. And then ironically, usually the things that help most America will eventually help those wealthy people as well. It might take a couple of years of their investment to return or whatever. But so it boils down to, you have to take on these industries, and you have to be able to pass legislation that doesn't directly just benefit those at the top. And again, it doesn't really matter left versus right. That's not like, there's a little bit difference in how the strategy would go about whether it's left versus right, but the bottom line is taking on those at the top. And in a lot of ways, that's what both the voters on both sides really want. I mean, a lot of what Trump talks about is he's known to be anti-establishment. He's populist. He says that he's for the American people, for the working people. He talks about how the Democrats forgot the working people, which is true. It's just both sides have forgotten him. So a lot of his popularity is talking like a populist. You could argue that he's a fake populist, maybe. That's for you to decide, but he speaks like a populist, like somebody that is for the common man. And Democrats, that's what they were supposed to be, and they've been losing that mantle for the last several years. So it boils down to, America wants politicians to care about the working person, the average American, the majority of us, and neither side is doing that anymore. And so it doesn't matter about left or right, because they're both on the side of the establishment. They're both on the side of the big donors. And yes, there's big differences when Republicans win versus Democrats on like certain moral policy stances, but the bottom line is things still get worse. Whether it's a Democrat or Republican, the economy is slowly getting worse since 2008. Every democracy is crumbling since 2008. Everything's falling apart. Arguably longer than 2008. So everything has been going worse and worse for a while now. So and it doesn't matter who's in office, again, because both of them are going to appease their biggest donors. So it's always going to be that same concentration of power that's going to protect where the country's moving, and the country's always moving towards them.
Yeah, no, that's so true, because when you put people in power based on good faith, and then they have to plug into this big money, big donor kind of world, of course we get left behind. I'm going to reset the room, but then Travis, I would love to go into, well, gosh, if Democrats, aren't doing what the voters want, and Republicans aren't doing what the voters want, how is Fink talking about and actually doing this shift of power from just waiting for this kind of savior politician or a savior legislation, and actually giving power back to the people to start changing the system? So let me reset the room. So welcome to people who are seeing us on TikTok, YouTube, or Facebook. We're Fink, and we are your civic utility company, and we are streamlining democracy and co-building with America an alternative system that makes democracy fair, simple, and accountable. So wherever you're tuning in from, remember to give us a like, hit that subscribe button. Our handle is futureis.org on all social media. So find us wherever you're logging in from. But feel free to jump in the chat section. We love talking with you guys. But yeah, Travis, what is Fink doing about this problem, right? It's so easy for people, to be in that left and right and say Democrats suck, Republicans suck. And at Fink, we're saying, yes, they both suck because they don't represent you. Their ear and their pen and, everything is leaning towards their big donors. So how is Fink rearranging the system of power?
Sure. So, but it boils down to we can all agree that we need better candidates, better on the left, better on the right, better in other combinations, outside the black and white of the two. So what we're talking about, our solutions at the core, is really evolving the candidate selection process. Everything like why candidates need millions of dollars, why they have to be in bed with the establishment, why all this stuff boils down to them. It all boils down to the election and getting our votes. And so, why does a candidate need millions of dollars? They need it to be seen, so that they even exist. And it's kind of crazy, but so right now there's about 3,000 elected officials in this country, from state down to, or from federal down to local, and every single one individually, separately has to advertise themselves to you in order to get elected. And it doesn't make sense why the billions of dollars we spend every year to advertise these people, and every man for themselves. It's just inefficient, it's expensive, and it's not fair. And then it boils down to shouldn't we want these candidates to spend their time representing us and legislating, rather than spending all their time dialing for dollars? That's where they should be spending their time. And so what we're talking about here is building one standardized system that showcases all the politicians equally, so that we start making that needing of millions of dollars starts becoming irrelevant. That if all candidates are showcased equally, side by side, you put your zip code in and it shows you all the candidates who's running in the two parties, outside the two parties. It shows what they stand for on policies, but then also shows their history. Are they honest? Do they fulfill their promises? What are their conflicts of interest based on the funding they receive? all that stuff being streamlined and simplified and user friendly for average people to see. And so that's what we're focusing on, something that's significantly cheaper, more efficient, fair, and it really puts the power into the citizen's lap instead of like instead of based on who's raising the most money to like manipulate you and throw billboards in your face and commercials and get in bed with the mainstream media, and then the media has their own ways they can influence you however they want, and they're going to only talk about their favorite candidates. If we all just start calling that's just noise, that's all bullshit, it's spin, and just start building one citizen-owned system that just streamlines the facts, gives you the objectives, you still decide where you stand on issues. If you're more right-leaning, you're more left-leaning, you're third party, that's totally up to you. We just want to show you the up-down, how legitimate is this candidate, how likely are they to actually fulfill their promises, how much might they be misleading you in what they're even offering you, things like that. But then where what you want them to do is 100% up to you. But yeah, so it's the bottom line is about streamlining democracy and really flipping the way the system works, of like having one standardized digital system, the digital home for America's democracy, and then with that showcase everyone. So all 3,000 candidates can run for the cost of like a couple senators' campaigns. Like we would just advertise the system, and then slowly try to get every American on this system so they see all their choices, know who's there at their disposal to support, and then people can make a more educated guess or a more educated decision on who they want to vote for, and they'll have all the transparent data at their disposal. So this will literally change everything, and it's just a matter of just getting people we have to build it and get people to subscribe to this vision. But it's like some people are kind of saying it's inevitable. This concept of a digital democracy is kind of inevitable. Everything else has been digitized. You're not gonna, if you're going to apply to a job, you're not going to write on a piece of application paper or with a pad and hand it to the manager in the store. No, you're going to go online. Everything's done online these days. So why isn't politics like one of the only things not digitized fully? And so that's kind of the core objective of our mission.
Yeah, thank you, Travis. And I'd like to right, that's the lofty goal. But like you're saying, we've been hearing it, on YouTube, on different podcasts, that it is inevitable, right? This shift from kind of this old rugged way to this digital, smooth, streamlined system that is just more accessible. It makes sense. But can you talk about where Fink is in our development of this system, right? We know the end goal, we know the carrot on the stick, but where are we in that development? And how can people who might be tuning in for the first time or tuned in a few times, how can they start buddying up with Fink and start supporting this mission?
Yeah, sure, great question. So right now, we're just finished. We've just finished developing the alignment stage, and so that is focused on digital politics. So that's the mindset shift, the lens that we've built. So that's done. We built this lens, the way to see politics as up versus down, how to assess a candidate as up versus down. Doesn't matter where you stand in left, right, or any other ideology. It's adding this just one extra layer of up versus down, as well as starting to see the system as a system. Like democracy is infrastructure, it's a system, and that's what's broken right now. So if we focus on the system itself and fixing that system, mainly the candidate selection process, everything else will work itself out. Like democracy, the system of democracy is meant knowing that, it knows that people argue. It knows that people are not going to agree on things. And that's why we have a complex system where you have different districts across states. You have 2 senators, you have multiple House people for each district. Then you have the president, you have the judiciary branch. Like, that is our system of democracy. It's meant to sort out all our differences. If we all agreed on the same thing, we wouldn't need all these different things, but it's all the counterbalance, like, differences of opinions, essentially. But the problem is the system is now rigged. It's now, it's all in favor of those with money. So yeah, there's the House, there's a Senate, it's broken down, but all of them are getting money from a small fraction of the population. Less than 1% of the population is funding most of these people getting elected. And therefore, it's not, even though it's all broken down district-wise, it's not broken down in terms of influence, because those with the most money are the ones influencing it. So right now, so digital politics is seeing that, looking at the problem as a systemic issue, the system issue, which is also the issue that we can all agree upon. This is something that, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, third party. Most people agree with what we're saying. Most people want, term limits on Congress, money out of politics, not allowing insider trading in Washington. There's all these structural issues are not partisan issues. So the phase that we're done setting up is the alignment phase, and that's the idea of, like, just understanding what our goal is and what the values are. That doesn't matter left versus right, or it doesn't matter what your political beliefs are. It's going to be respected. That's kind of like, we're going to actually put our political lenses aside for a minute, focus on the system itself. The system needs to be upgraded to the digital age. And it's something that we won't fight over. It's something that most Americans will agree on the same side of this issue. It's arguably 85-90% of Americans will agree with the same side of this issue. So that's the alignment. So we're done with the alignment, like setting up the alignment stage. And now in less than a month, we're moving on to the coordination stage, which is the launching of our digital politics hub. And that's to coordinate this now that we have very clear goals or values, like how people need to come into this, seeing it in a very neutral way that works across all Americans, essentially. Then the stage of coordination is all about, getting citizens involved. We need citizens, journalists, movements, and other political orgs, candidates. We want to start really lining up everyone that wants to be involved in the creation of this next generation of politics, because we want it citizen-owned. We're literally building it where every American can opt into an equal ownership stake of this technology. And in order to build it by citizens, we have to coordinate with America. We need your guys' decisions in this process. We want you to be a decision maker. So when the Digital Politics Hub launches in less than a month, it'll allow you to put your name on the list to be a future owner of the system. It starts opening feedback, having a two-way communication between you and the development of this platform. You get to nominate journalists, political orgs, movements. It's a way to basically build this movement of movements, this meta movement that we've shaped out, built the roadmap for. And so this next stage is that coordination stage. So getting people involved, getting people's opinions. We have a very clear skeleton of what we want digital democracy to look like, showcasing all politicians, conflict of interest being shown straightforward. There's going to be a home for for independent journalists. So tons and tons of features, but the goal is that it's going to forever be growing, forever evolving. It includes technologies that even already exist, and it's just a matter of standardizing and plugging them into the center for citizens to oversee and utilize regularly. So that's where we are, and even in a coordination stage. So it gives you ability to grow the people power, and the bigger the people power, the faster we can make this whole thing a reality. But also in the meantime, it helps you learn how to see in DP, how to assess a candidate even before digital democracy is launched, and just different ways to start seeing things from a system view, from starting to see things from outside the rigged patterns that were manipulated into seeing it as, and so there's a lot to happen within the coordination stage. So it's both coordinating the movement as well as learning a lot of different things that you'd want to learn about, how to see things beyond just the two-party system, and able to build a better future by seeing it a little more objectively and from a higher perspective.
Awesome. And before we start doing our outro and wrapping this up, any final words from you, Travis, before we get wrapped up here?
No, I guess that's good.
Sorry. But yeah, everyone, we're really excited at Think about the Digital Politics Hub, like Travis said, coming out within a month. Really excited about that. And this alternative, this coordinated system that Think is building, it's not going to magically drop from the sky, right? It takes people power, it takes people inputs, and it takes conversation and support from people like you who are tired of the rigged system and want to really support something that gives power back to the people like you and me. So keep up to date. Make sure you follow us across social media. Our handle is futureis.org. Give us a like, give us a follow. We will be back tomorrow at 11 Eastern and 2 Pacific. And we'll keep talking about what Think has in store for the future, what kind of things are going to be rolling out, different ways you guys can plug in. And we're going to keep talking about just the the nonsensical nature of establishment politics and how, gosh, even if we're on opposite sides of the aisle, neither one of us is getting what we want when politicians keep choosing power over the people. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're looking forward to tuning in tomorrow with you guys, and we will talk to you then. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. See you tomorrow.